Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick too. Recently I've been having a ton of people in my Twitch chat tell me that they're stuck on a certain challenge tier and they just don't know what to do. They feel like they've hit a wall. So today I figured that I would just dedicate a video to answering that question of how to get unstuck on certain challenge tier difficulties so that you guys can make your way up all the way to challenge tier 15 with a little bit less difficulty. These tips are going to apply to literally everybody, from people stuck at CT3 all the way to people stuck on CT15. All these tips I'll be sharing are things that I personally did on my journey to CT15 on my Trickster a few days ago, but I've also been doing the exact same thing on every character that I have been grinding expeditions with, and just knowing a few of these things can actually help you out a ton and make a huge difference to overcome those walls. I'll try to make this video as short as I can while leaving in all of the pertinent information, so please make sure to drop a like if the video does help you out, since YouTube just absolutely hates shorter videos. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. So first things first, this tip might seem a bit obvious, but I may as well just mention it. This tip is to just make sure that you have a certain build in mind. If you just put on whatever gear seems good at the time without any intention or thought process behind it, your setup isn't going to have any synergy, and therefore your damage is probably going to end up being really low. I'd highly recommend watching some build guides so you have an idea of what you should be looking for on your gear, as a lot of this game is all about building synergies, and if you don't have any of those synergies going on, you're probably not going to be very effective. Currently, I do have build videos for 3 of the classes, and I will be making one for Devastator tonight, so make sure to check those out if you think that you would benefit from that. But this also leads well into my next tip, which is to not just instantly equip any piece of gear that has slightly higher stats on it. A lot of your gear mods are actually incredibly important to ensure that your build actually works, and even if the gear that you're getting has much more firepower or whatever else, it's actually entirely possible that you'll cut your damage significantly, potentially even by half, by equipping something that seems like an upgrade, but it has much worse mods on it. So pay close attention to what mods you want to be looking out for, and try your best to never have to swap out some of those mods that are going to heavily impact your overall damage. An example of such mod would be like increasing your Twisted Rounds firepower, pretty much anything that affects any of the rounds like Twisted, Volcanic, or Blighted rounds. Those are incredibly powerful, but of course, I mentioned all those in my build video, so if you're interested, again, check those out, so you guys will know which mods are the most impactful. The next tip, again, pretty simple, but I've actually seen a ton of people messing this up. Make sure that you're equipping the gear that has the correct stat that you're looking for. If you're trying to run like a gun DPS build, you pretty much never want to equip anything that doesn't have firepower on it. The same goes for anomaly power. In terms of max health, this is kind of be a side tangent. I honestly wouldn't recommend ever putting that on your gear, as it's going to impact your overall health pool by a very little amount, and it's also just going to cut your damage by a lot. Relative to how much extra damage you're going to get from other things, max health is just almost never worth it, and you'd just be way better off having more damage and just getting more survivability in the form of a mod or something. So honestly, avoid max health at all costs, unless they randomly make the value 4 times higher than it is currently. So as you can probably tell, a lot of these tips so far have been pretty generalized, and some of them are a bit simple, and I imagine a good bit of you were already following these. So now let's get into what you should do when you're actually completely stuck, even if you have been following these. Maybe you already have good gear with good mods, good stats, etc., but you just can't seem to make that jump from CT10 to CT11, and you really don't know what to do. The number one thing that I've been telling people, and I think that actually helps a ton, and that I even did myself in order to get to CT15, was to just upgrade your own gear, or just try and get upgrades. This honestly seems pretty obvious, but there's a bit more to it than you'd think. Every time you complete a new challenge difficulty for the first time, your wearable level of gear is going to go up, right? So then when you complete the subsequent expedition, higher level gear drops. Well, the thing is about this, one of the main reasons that you actually end up getting stuck is simply because you're just wearing low level gear than what is intended for that expedition. You're probably wearing gear that was from like CT10, and you're wondering why you can't do a CT14, because you got this piece of gear from CT10 that had super good rolls on it, and you just haven't bothered to upgrade it yet, and you thought that it was fine because it has good rolls on it. The thing is that if you're wearing gear like that you got from 3 or 4 challenge tiers ago, your armor, stats, etc. are actually going to be significantly lower than what they would be at if you were wearing gear from the highest challenge tier that you completed. While it is really important to keep mods on that are incredibly powerful, the problem is that you'll end up seeing yourself getting randomly one-shotted all the time because your armor is going to be much lower, and so are your stats. More of how to remedy the one-shotting problem in a minute, but truthfully, it is a little bit difficult to always have gear that's on par with the current challenger difficulty, because it can just be really hard finding another purple that has the right stats, mods, etc. for you to be able to replace a current piece that you're using. A quick aside, always make sure that you're checking the wheelchair vendor, as she can have really good items, especially if there's certain mods that you're looking for, and the items that she has are always going to update to the highest challenge tier that you have, even if you're grinding lower challenge tiers, her items are always going to be on par with the highest challenge tier that you're able to do. But anyways, because it's hard to get perfect gear, I'd highly just recommend upgrading the gear that you have that's currently really good. It can get a little bit expensive, but on my trickster, I got decent rolls at like CT9 or 10, and I used pretty much all of the same gear all the way up until CT15 because I just couldn't find anything that was too much of an upgrade, and it was just better for me to upgrade the stuff that was already good. In terms of what items you should prioritize upgrading first, I'd always recommend going for the weapon, as per challenge tier, the extra damage it can do is actually going to scale up a ton, and that's probably going to make the biggest impact. The next thing you should upgrade is any gear that rolled really well, so you know you're not going to replace it anytime soon, or it would be really, really difficult to replace. Or maybe upgrade some gear that has mods on it that increase firepower, armor, anomaly power, or whatever by a flat number, such as like bloodlust or something, since that amount is going to go up a ton each time you level up the item, because those mods are going to scale on the item level, whereas some other mods like your class mods don't really scale on item level. Depends on the mod, of course, but generally you get the idea. Now you also may be asking, how in the world am I supposed to get that many materials to upgrade my gear all the time? I don't really have a great answer for you. Truth is, you're gonna probably need to just deconstruct a ton of purples, and you might require a good bit of farming, like a challenge tier under you. Typically what I would do if I met a wall is to just do an expedition tier that I'm comfortable that I can clear relatively quickly and also get some decent gear out of, and then you just deconstruct all the purples for a bunch of materials, maybe sell some of the blues, because the blues aren't going to give you titanium, and if you sell some of the blues then you're actually able to buy stuff from the vendor, and you just deconstruct all the purples for those juicy mats. Honestly though, upgrading your gear helps out an absolute ton, especially because armor is going to play such a massive role in your overall survivability, and the armor goes up a ton each time you go up a challenge tier. If you didn't already know, armor affects your physical damage reduction, which honestly is usually what ends up getting you killed is physical damage. So I guarantee if you have some pieces on with like 1/2 the armor of your other pieces, because it's like 4 or 5 challenge tiers lower, upgrade those pieces to just your current gear level, and you're just going to feel a massive improvement in your overall survivability for doing something that seems pretty menial. But honestly, a lot of the classes in this game are really squishy regardless. And maybe you're like me when I was gearing my trickster, where you felt like you had plenty of damage, your mods are pretty good, your gear is upgraded, you're all good, but you just keep getting one-shotted all the time. Well, luckily for you, I have a list of mods that can help your survivability out a ton that I still even use to this day, and that I used on my trickster and all my other subsequent characters that helped me out a ton. First off, rejuvenation isn't half bad. It gives some decent amount of armor, but it also gives you some damage every time that you're going to heal up, which is going to be pretty much almost all of the time, since when you kill people you heal on pretty much every class. So rejuve is a decent half and half. If you're going to be playing something where you apply bleed frequently, Thirst for Blood can be completely insane, as Weapon Leech is very powerful in this game, and 40% is just a ton of leech. If you actually pair this with Vein Ripper, you could easily have the 40% leech up almost all the time, as you're constantly applying bleed. And if you even wanted to as well, you could also get Vampiric Mag, so you never have to reload. That's pretty helpful. Damage Absorber is one of the best defensive mods in the game, as it by default is just going to double your armor, and it also gives you 10% resistance to help against fire and stuff like that on top. And like I was saying earlier, armor is just insanely helpful, as it's going to give you so much extra damage reduction, which is going to save you a lot from those pesky one-shots. Diffuse is another okay mod. It's decent. I'm not a huge fan, as you only get the benefit when you're sprinting, and I'm not really sprinting all the time because I would rather be shooting, and you can't really shoot while sprinting, so not great, but it's at least something, I guess, if you like wanted to run away from enemies when you're getting low. Emergency Stance, next one, is insanely clutch sometimes, since it's going to activate Golem for 4 seconds when you drop below 35% health, and Golem is actually going to give you 65% damage reduction exactly when you need it, so I'd highly recommend this one. You pair this with Ice Trap, which is going to freeze enemies when you get low health on a pretty low internal cooldown. As long as you have good damage to kill all the enemies when they're frozen, you'll become nearly unkillable when using these two mods together, and I can't even count how many times they've saved me. Another fantastic one is Mitigation from Death. This is going to almost triple your overall armor if you keep 3 stacks up all the time. Personally, I found this to be almost mandatory on my Technomancer, but just make sure that you're getting kills while ADS, otherwise it's just not going to do anything. That's about it for the survivability mods. There's a couple ones that are decent, but these are the key ones that I've found that I've pretty much used on almost all my characters. I'd also make sure to look out for some weapon leech stuff. It can roll on your weapon even, as that can actually help a ton for your overall survivability. But generally my philosophy overall is that the best defense is to have good offense, so try not to go too overboard on the defensive side of things, because you don't want to make your overall damage so bad that you really can't kill things anymore, because then you're just going to get overrun with enemies and you're just going to die. Personally, I found the most success using about 2 or 3 defensive gear mods and then the rest just going full offensive, so I have a nice mix between defense and offense, and that seems to work very well for me. So yeah, that's pretty much it. As a summary, basically just always make sure that your gear is modded properly and has the correct stats. Anytime that you're at a wall, make sure to just upgrade your gear or search for upgrades, since being higher item level makes a really big difference, but also don't sacrifice any of your really good mods. You want a good middle ground there, but it is difficult to find. You just need to get all the right gear, of course. And pretty much the main tip, don't sleep on armor or survivability options, since they're going to help you out just an absolute ton, and I guarantee you, you're going to feel a lot safer and a lot more comfortable once you start getting some survivability things built into your build. Alright guys, hopefully the video helped. If it did, please make sure to drop a like. If it didn't help you out, please let me know down in the comments what I could have done better, or leave your own tips in the comments. But with that said, enjoy grinding guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. Make sure to check me out on Twitch, etc. Alright, have a good one. Peace.